everybody, and welcome to Living Christian Ministries. This election season is a unique one in that we have two presidential candidates nearing the age of 80. One is already 80. And it seems, in a way, a question of are we preparing for a presidential election or a papal election? That is all I wish to say about the candidates themselves. What I'd like to reflect on in this short time here today is the importance of voting. The Catechism is very clear on the importance of us voting. And we're going to look at what the Catechism says, and we're going to reflect on why it's important that we vote, even when the candidates don't seem like good options. Even when it seems like both candidates are flawed in their own unique ways. In our case today, we see one is deemed by many, even his own party, to be incompetent, and the other is deemed to be a criminal. That's just what the media is telling us. Whether it's true or not is up to one's own interpretation, of course, but that does not negate what the Catechism teaches, what the Church teaches, and what it is we are morally obligatory to do, morally obligated to do. So let us just go straight to the source itself. The Catechism of the Catholic Church, Article 2240. There we go. It says, submission to authority and co-responsibility for the common good make it morally obligatory to pay taxes, to exercise the right to vote, and to defend one's country. Now, as you can see, I have a number of articles pulled up for what this actually means. Trent Horn makes the argument that this doesn't necessarily mean we have to vote in every single election. Where does he talk about it? What is this Trent Horn here? But he makes the argument that this doesn't necessarily mean we have to vote in every election, just as it doesn't mean we are all called to service of the country and going to war. Computers being weird there. But what it recognizes, we're just going to switch out of here. What it recognizes, though, is the importance of voting. And it says it's morally obligatory. That means we have a grave duty to vote. What that means is we have the duty and the right to make our opinion known in the case of voting, and to ensure that those who will best lead our nation are the ones that are being elected. And so, again, Trent Horn makes the argument that it's not necessary that we necessarily vote in every single election. I would push back against that, though. I respect Trent Horn tremendously. And certainly, and for those who don't know, he's a Catholic apologetics, works for Catholic Answers, has his own podcast, the Council of Trent, and he knows his stuff. But it seems in this case that the Catechism's clear that we have the moral obligation to vote. It doesn't state how often we should vote. It doesn't say vote every 4 years and only vote in the one election that matters. I would make the argument that it states we should be voting in the primary election. We should be voting in every election, not just every 4 years, not just every 2 years, but every opportunity we have to vote it seems the Catechism is saying we ought to do so. Now, the pushback against that idea would be, well, what does it mean to defend one's country if it doesn't mean to go to war? I would have to reflect deeper on that. Maybe we can do another video. But it seems somewhat clear that we have the duty to exercise our right to vote, and we ought to do so. And that we shouldn't just wait till the candidates we don't want are brought forward in the presidential election at the 4-year mark. We have the ability to make a difference way before we get to that point. And are we doing so? Or are we just going to take Trump versus Biden and accept the fact that we're going to have two 80-year-old presidents for the next 4 years? And there's nothing wrong with being 80 years old, but if you think about it, most people are retiring at 70 or something like around that time frame. For some reason, that just feels weird to me that we have two 80-year-old people running for president, and it seems that we could have, younger men just as motivated. And it's my personal opinion that it needs to be less of politics and more of just good leadership. We need somebody who can lead our country through the difficult times. We need someone who will be transparent with the country. And we need someone whose authority people will respect and recognize, no matter what political party they find themselves in. And so, was there anything else I had? Yeah, there's another article about can we vote third party? Certainly we can, but if we recognize that voting third party doesn't actually affect the election as much as we would like to think it does, then we're really not making the difference that we're supposing to be making. And we have to recognize these are conscious being rightly formed. If we're gonna refuse to vote in an election, are we rightly formed? Has our conscience been well developed, or are we just throwing our hand in, recognizing that it seems like both candidates are horrible? It seems like we can't make a difference in this one, so we're just gonna take it and run. I don't think that's the solution. I think the church says that, or I've heard it said from members of the church, anyways, that we always have to vote, or we should always vote for the least evil of the two candidates. And I guess if we had a case where both were completely evil, then maybe there's a discussion there to be had. But and one could make that argument in this case, but that doesn't take away our obligation to vote. I think what the Catechism also shows is we exercise our right to vote. Maybe we choose not to vote in the presidential slot, but we can still vote for the senators, the judges, and everybody else that is on the ballot. We shouldn't just look at the presidential candidate. And I think in this country we have a major falling out in that capacity. We are so locked in on voting one party that how many of us actually take the time to evaluate every single person on the ballot to determine who is actually good for their role? We need to evaluate the judges just as much as we need to evaluate the presidents, because guess who is going to be doing the lawmaking and all that? It's going to be the judges. The judges of the Supreme Court are the ones that will ultimately help to eliminate things like Roe versus Wade, as we saw with the Supreme Court just 2 years ago. It's the judges who ultimately did that. The president put the right people in there to do that. But but yeah, even though judges are political, supposed to be political one way or another, they are just as important in the presidential election, and even in our lower courts, in our cities, in our counties, they're just as important as well. Those elections matter just as much as the larger ones, and we've seen how each state thinks differently. So it's very important on all levels of government how we choose to vote, and we ought to exercise our right, our moral duty to do so. And that's how we can defend our country. We can defend our country by voting to ensure that the principles of which this country was founded upon can be the principles of which we live today in 2024. And even more importantly, that the principles that the Lord instilled upon the heart of man may be the principles that we strive to live in as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know about you, but it doesn't seem like there's much justice in the world right now. There's 2,000 people at least in Pittsburgh right now that have nowhere to stay. They're homeless. You could say that's their own choosing, and certainly for some of them it is. But that's just one city. How's that justice? That's probably every major city in America. 2,000 people or more without a home to stay in. That's unacceptable. That's not liberty. And we're fighting to keep all these people out at the borders, but we're not even taking care of our own people within the borders. So it's time for us to take action. We have a duty in this election in 2024 to vote. And before we close here, you probably already saw it. Hopefully you did. The 5 non-negotiable issues that the church gives us. And we can see forefront what they are. I'm just confirming whether or not this is still Catechism or not. It does not look like this section is in the Catechism from what I'm looking at in my own Catechism. I know these issues are certainly discussed in the Catechism. That's foregone conclusion. Well, let's look at the 5 non-negotiable issues, and maybe I'll put a link in the notes below. But as we can see, that abortion, non-negotiable; euthanasia, non-negotiable; embryonic stem cell research, non-negotiable; human cloning, non-negotiable; and homosexual marriage, non-negotiable. So, if you see on the ballot, if you do your homework, as we all should, I will seek to do my homework as well. If we do our homework and we see any one of those 5 things on there as something that the candidate supports, we know that we can't vote for them. And that can become tricky when we have people like President Trump who have gone back and forth on their beliefs. President Biden is as well. It's kind of funny that they used to be opposite, actually. President Biden used to be pro-life, and now he's pro-choice, and President Trump used to be pro-choice, and now he's pro-life. But such is life, I guess. But yeah, if those 5 things are anybody, not just the president, again, senators, judges, and all of the above, we can't vote for them. It's morally dangerous. It's a grave matter, and just for clarity purposes, since I have made you aware of this, I've shown you where you can go to find it, at least in regards to the importance to vote under 2240 of the Catechism. And like I said, non-negotiables are certainly in the Catechism, if not listed as non-negotiables, at least abortion, euthanasia, and such are listed as um, crimes against people. But since I have made you aware of this, it's no longer just a grave matter. If you still knowingly voted freely against um, the five non-negotiables, or if you knowingly chose not to vote, knowing that you have the moral obligation to vote, it would determine a mortal sin, and that's the gravest sin of them all. Um, so I don't say that to scare anyone. I just say that to help you to be aware. Like Trent Horn said we don't necessarily have to vote in every single election. I push back on that idea because that doesn't seem to be what it's saying. It seems we have the duty to exercise our right to vote, and we need to do so more than ever because this is a nation under God, and day after day, it seems that we're getting away from the principles on which this land was founded. So let us return. Let us return to the great nation. Let us return to God and pray for his protection over our nation and our country during this time of election, that our leaders, the ones that will truly lead us to better days, to greater freedom, to more sincere peace, that will truly bring healing to the hearts of all, may be the ones that are elected, the ones that will truly lead this country to the future, a better future, may be the ones that are elected. One thing that irritates me the most with these elections is that it's all about poking fun at the other. It's all about bullying. I want a candidate who's going to be a bully. I want a candidate that's going to lead our nation and that's going to do everything in his power to bring about peace, not just here in America, but peace here on earth.